Hello. So we've got the basics of Unity down pat, right? We know how to create 3D objects, simple 3D objects. We know how to create some materials. We made a script last time, but we didn't write anything in it. And so today what we're going to do is take a look at basic scripting by doing something that most games do in one shape or form, which is spawning or instantiating. Okay, so we are going to spawn a coin, and we'll spawn a coin at a world point, or we can spawn the coin at the point of the object that we want. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen without further ado. And let's take a look at our project. Now, I'm using a coin, a gold coin. This is by Gnarly Potato. It's called Old Coin. This is, it's an asset that I've been using for a long time, and it's just easy, quick. If you want to download it to follow along, go to the Asset Store. So from within Unity, that's Windows Asset Store. And then search for Old Coin, or you can search for Gnarly Potato. It's free. You just have to download it and import it, okay? So let's create a floor real quickly. That's going to be a 3D object, cube. Then I'm going to use my tools that we kind of went over last time in the top left to transform it. So R is going to give me my scale tool, and I can scale the X. And I can also scale the Z. Okay, and just as a reminder, the other thing we want to keep an eye on is the inspector. Okay, so the inspector is up here, and that's telling us exactly the scale of our object, right? It's 10.379 by 1 by 13.213. Okay. And one of the ways that I actually prefer to scale objects is by clicking and holding this number and dragging it out. Okay, so we click and drag the X and drag it until, it fills the screen. Same thing with Z. And if I click W in scene view, I can move it up and down. E allows me to rotate along the axes. And I can zoom out too with the scroll wheel just to see what we're working with. Okay, I'm going to zero out the rotations, and I'll also zero out the positions by clicking the number and entering 0. Okay, cool. So now we have this floor. Just to stay organized, because right now we're only going to have a few things in our hierarchy, but within a very short amount of time, you are going to wind up having a ton of objects in your scene. So I'm going to call this floor, and let's give it a blue material that we created last week. Just as a reminder, in your assets folder, you right-click, create material, and that'll give you your material. Then with the material selected, you can go over to the inspector and change its color with the color picker. Great. So now we have a floor. Okay. Let's make like another box, 3D object, cube. And let's say this is going to be our spawner, right? We want coins to pop out of this thing. So I'm going to make this red. And I'm going to rotate it slightly towards the camera so we can see it. And then we'll shoot coins towards the camera or something. Okay. And for that, what we need is a script. Okay, a C# script. So one of the easiest ways to add a script to your project and to the object at the same time is to select the object in your hierarchy scroll down in the inspector and click Add Component. And then just type in the name of your script. And you can call it anything you want. I'm going to call it spawner. Okay, create and add. And now the reason I called it spawner is because in this lesson we are going to spawn coins. That doesn't mean you have to always spawn coins. You can spawn anything. And one of the keys to good programming is efficiency and extendability. Okay, so programming it so that one script can spawn anything you ever want to spawn, right? So the way to open this is I'm going to double click right in this name area. It's going to open up in Visual Studio. And I'm going to go back to Unity for a second just to make sure we understand where I clicked there, because this part can be a little tough. So I have my cube. Let's rename it spawner. And then I scroll down and we have the spawner script. Now, in order to open that script, what I did was I clicked spawner inside of this little radial, next to this radial button right here, spawner. Okay? And that allowed me to go right into Visual Studio. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at common variable types in C#, and we're going to use some of them in order to spawn an object. Okay, so let's talk about some, basically what we see here on our screen. And what we see here are, what we see here is the start of every script, basically, right? So let me change my color for annotating. Let's go to red. Up here, we see the using section. This is going to tell the program all of the different collections we're going to use. And this allows us to use a lot of stuff that you don't really need to know just yet. This is our class declaration, public class spawner. That's the name that we gave it. It's incredibly important that the name down here in your project is exactly the same as the name up here. That's a common misstep for early, scripters and programmers, is that their class declaration is different than what it is in their scene or in their project folder. That's going to give you problems. All right. Then we have this up here, which is it's inheriting from mono behavior. That allows us to attach this script to different game objects, which is super helpful in Unity. Start happens once, the first frame, and then update happens 60 times, once per frame. So depending on your frame rate, it's going to happen a lot. Okay, so update is happening constantly. It's going through every line that you write here, and then it's going all the way to the top and going through every line again. So be very important with what you put in update because it's going to run constantly. That being said, it's a very common thing to program in. We're going to be programming a lot of stuff in update. You don't have to be afraid of it, just be aware. Okay, now in between the class declaration and start is here we declare variables. Okay, and variables are like boxes, right? Like a variable, I would say, is like a box. let's draw a little box here. And inside of that box, we tell it what its type is. Okay, so if its type is int, which stands for integer, then it's going to be, we can put anything in this box. Okay, it needs to have a type, a name, and let's say the name is like health. Then we can assign health to be anything of this type. So it can be 6, it can be 20, it can be 52. It cannot be 62.4 because that is a double. And it can't be 68.923 because that's a float. It also can't be Eric because that is that's a string. It can't be the letter T because that's a char. And it can't be true or false, right? These are all different variable types, pretty common variable types. So let's use some of them right now. Okay, here we declare variables. So let's go ahead and say one thing we need is going to be a public game object. And we'll call that obj to spawn. And you'll notice that I'm writing lowercase to start, and then it's what's called camel case. The next word has an uppercase, and the next word has an uppercase or a capital letter. Okay, and that is a common way for programmers to write out their variables. And that's because functions start with capital letters. Variables usually start with lowercase letters. Okay, we're going to pause for just a minute. Right, so we have this variable called object to spawn, or obj to spawn. That's the name of the variable. Then we have the type, and we also have its access level. Okay, its accessibility. So it's either public or private, and there's like a whole bunch of other ones, but those are the main ones. Public means that it can be accessed by this script and other scripts that are accessing this script. Private means it can only be accessed within this script, and it will not be exposed in the inspector. So I'm just going to write a comment here that says public means the variable is exposed in the inspector, which is super helpful, especially for new programmers. Okay, so we have this obj to spawn, and then let's create a simple timer by having public float time left, and then let's do original time. Okay, and what we are going to do is, in update, we're going to say, we're going to count down. We're going to create a countdown, basically. Okay, and to create a countdown, we need 2 numbers. I know it seems like we just need 1, but really we need 2. We need the number that we're currently at, so time left, and that's going to go down, and when that hits 0, we're going to spawn. But we also need our original time so that we can go back to the original time, count down, go back, count down, go back. And a lot of the stuff that we're learning now, there are slightly better or majorly better, faster ways to do it. But the reason why we learn this way is so that we get some practice with different variable types. We get practice with using update. We get practice with resetting variables to other variables. So, you know, if you are an intermediate programmer, this stuff might be a little too easy. But for beginners, it's really, really helpful to start with these fundamentals. Okay, so in update, we're going to tick down our timer. And so we're going to say time left minus equals time.delta time. Okay, and that time.delta time is the time since the time in seconds since the last frame, it's basically human time. Okay, so computers are running way, way, way faster than us. And time.delta time is basically 1, 2, 3, things like that. All right, so minus equals means, that means time left equals time left minus time dot delta time. Okay, so if time left was 5, then it's going to equal 5 minus 1, which is 4. And then if time left equals 4, then it's going to equal 4 minus 1, which is 3. Cool. And so that's going to count down. And then we want to say if time left is less than or equal to 0, so if we gotten to 0, then we're going to spawn our coin. Okay, so let's tick down, right? Or we already ticked down, so let's spawn a coin. And the way to spawn a coin is to instantiate obj to spawn. We're going to instantiate it at this position, so transform dot position. And we're going to say that the rotation is going to be quaternion dot identity. Okay, I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see the whole line. And again, don't worry about not understanding all of this right away. I will highlight over this and show you that this form of the function instantiate takes 3 parameters. Okay, it takes a game object, it takes a position, which is a vector 3, and it takes a rotation, which is a quaternion. Again, it's okay if you don't know what a quaternion is. That makes 2 of us. No, I understand what quaternions do, but they are incredibly complex. And if you're watching this beginner video, you don't need to worry about the W in a vector 4. Okay, so anyways, so we're going to instantiate the coin right there, right? It's not really going to do anything at this point, but it is, you know, game making is iterative and it's a bunch of small steps, small improvements. So let's test it at this point. It's usually a good time to, it's a good idea to test your code every once in a while. Okay, so we don't have a game object to spawn yet. Let's say time left is going to be 5 seconds. And original time will also be 5 seconds. When I press play, let's keep an eye on those numbers. It is counting down. So that's good. It's counting down. It doesn't have anything to spawn. So that's one thing. And then we also forgot to reset the time. So time left should not equal 5. It should equal original time. Okay, so let's take a look at that. That should, you know, count down to 0, then reset. Good. And we get a null reference exception, which means that we need to put something into our obj to spawn. All right, so let's do that. Our I gotta bring Unity back here. Let's go to our Japanese coin. Let's drag in the coin prefab into our scene. We'll double click it in order to see it. We'll zoom out a little bit so that we can see it a little bit better, and we can see that it's really, really small. So let's make it like 7 by 7 by 7, and let's rotate it along the x-axis 90 degrees so that we can see it straight on. Great. Let's also apply a material to it. So let's open up the materials and apply this. Do we want this one on here? Let's try it. About coins. Does that one help? Default mat. Come on. Coins. There we go. That's fine. Yep, that looks like a coin to me. Very shiny. Okay, so now that we have this coin, what we're going to do is we're actually going to drag it into our assets folder. So click and drag it into your assets folder, and that will create an original prefab. And that is what we are going to spawn. Okay, so if we go to our spawner, we scroll down and we drag the coin into the OBJ to spawn slot. Then we press play, and now every 5 seconds, our spawner should instantiate a coin. Okay, it counted down to 0, and it made a coin. Okay, and we can't see those coins, but they're right here. They're in our inspector. And like I said, it's not really doing much right now because that's all we told it to do, is to spawn a coin. So if we wanted to make it do something a little more, we would mess with this prefab. Okay, so in this prefab, we can add a component of type rigid body. And what a rigid body will do is make this be affected by physics, including gravity. So if I press play, with the rigid body on, this prefab falls straight through the floor. And that's because it doesn't have a collider on it. So let's go ahead and add a component. And let's add a box collider to it. And I know, you're thinking this is a coin, it's circular, that's not a box, but it's okay for now. If we click edit collider, we can drag this anchor down, and we can drag the side anchor down. We can also drag this depth anchor all the way down. Okay, and now if we zoom in, we have a box collider around our coin. That's pretty good. I know, again, it's not a circle, but trust me, you want to use primitive colliders, and it's not going to matter that much. Okay, so now if we duplicated this coin and threw it in the air, it falls according to gravity. And we're almost done. So if we click this object and we click overrides, then we apply the box collider and the rigid body to the prefab. And that's important, okay, because we need our prefab to have those objects on it, not just the instance of the prefab in the scene. So I'm going to click play, and then I'm going to go to my spawner, and let's take a look. Ooh, cool. Yeah, it's spitting out coins here. It's instantiating them. And if I make the original time like 1, we can pop out a coin every second, or I can make it less than 1, like 0.2. And now every 0.2 seconds, it's spawning a coin. And these coins don't actually have motion in their own scripts or on their own. What's happening is the coin is spawning, and then a coin is spawning at the coin's location, and it's shooting the other one away because they're both colliding with each other. Okay? So with that, we have our basics of, collisions and rigid bodies and spawning in Unity. And believe it or not, you can even start making games with those primitive skills because those constraints are going to open up your creativity, and you can try to make something really cool. So yeah, make a spawner, make it spawn on a timer. We didn't talk about input.getButtonDown, but you can try using that with the input manager. And overall, just have fun and make some cool stuff. All right, I'll see you soon.